Welcome to the second part of this video in which we will be discussing on data protection management system. In the first part of this video, we decoded the Digital Data Protection Bill 2023 of India, which is aimed at providing protection for personal data of Indian citizens. Now, in this second video, we will be discussing on this data protection management system, which is a framework, or you can say it is a set of practices and processes that an organization implements in order to manage the processing of personal data within the organization effectively. The primary goal of data protection management system is to make the organization compliant towards these different regulations of different countries for data protection. One of the other goal of data protection management system is also to provide protection for individuals' right and freedom of its personal data. And we will also discuss in this video what are the main components that go into making a data protection management system. We will not be discussing the complete list of components that go into making a data protection management system, but rather we will be discussing just these four main components that go into building a data protection management system. Understanding these four main components will give you a fair enough understanding of how a data protection management system works within an organization, and using these four main components, how an organization can aim to become compliant towards the different data protection laws of different countries. So, as I already said, that the main aim, the primary goal of a data protection management system is to ensure that organization handles the personal data responsibly, securely, and in accordance with the applicable laws and regulations. So, how it will do this? It will have certain processes such as privacy impact assessment and data protection impact assessment processes in place at its core. It will have certain tools, softwares that can automate these processes and keep a record of all processing activities that involve processing of personal data. By processing activities, I mean projects that will be processing personal data of employees, customers, or users, etc. Then there will have to be certain teams involved in running the data protection management system effectively. Specifically, the organization would need a data privacy team consisting of a data protection officer and several data protection coordinators. And then there will be legal and compliance teams, infosec, human resource teams, enterprise architecture teams that an organization will have within its framework for assisting the data privacy team. Then one another important component that forms a part of data protection management system is the trainings and awareness campaigns. The aim of training and awareness campaigns in a data protection management system is to educate the employees, contractors, and all relevant stakeholders about data protection principles, regulations, best practices, and what is their responsibility in handling of the personal data. If the employees are involved, for example, in a project that is going to process personal data, then employees should be aware of how to approach the data privacy team for approval. What is the process for getting the project that is involved in personal data processing approved? In case if there are any security incidents related to personal data, then who they should reach out to, how they should implement the security measures for personal data protection, what data falls under the category of personal data. So all these things uh, will be will need to be covered by the trainings and awareness campaigns. So training and awareness campaign is an important component of data protection management system that runs within an organization. Now, coming to the processes part, as I said, that privacy impact assessment and data protection impact assessment, these processes the are at the core of data protection management system. The goals of these two processes is they differ from each other. The primary goal of privacy impact assessment process is focused on individuals' rights and freedom, on maintaining the right for privacy of the individual. And the primary goal of data protection impact assessment process is focused on regulations such as data protection bill, GDPR, and other international data protection regulations from different countries. So the main goal of data protection impact assessment process is getting the organization compliant with these regulations. The data protection management software, it will automate these processes to some extent. More importantly, it will keep a record of all the processes that are involved in processing the PII. It will maintain a risk register so that in case if some projects which are involved in processing of the PII are processing the PII in certain countries which are not deemed safe, if the project has certain administrators which are based in countries that are not deemed as safe by the regulations, then the risk score of that project will be high for processing the personal data, and then that will have to be recorded in the risk register. Mm, Then the data protection management system will also be a repository for storing the data processing agreements. Data processing agreements are the documents that are signed between the data processor and the person whose data is getting processed. So, for example, if a project is processing the data, personal data of its customers, then it needs to get this data processing agreement signed from its customers, from its users, take their consent, and tell them what data is being processed, or for how much time the data is going to be read. All those details go into the data processing agreements, and then the data processing agreements are also stored within this data protection management software. It will collect info on PII in each projects, like get a general understanding of where the data is getting processed, who are the administrators who will be accessing the data, what kind of security measures are put into place for protecting the personal data of the users. So all those kind of details will be collected and stored in the data protection management software, and then once it is stored there, it kind of becomes easy for the data privacy team to review that process and then approve the processing activity. We will look at the DPMS software a little bit in detail with an example on the next slide. Data privacy team, this is one of the main component of data protection management system. The data privacy team will mostly consist of lawyers who understand the laws and regulations in depth. Uh, and the team will mostly consist of one data protection officer sitting in the headquarters and then several data protection coordinators reporting to him. These data protection coordinators will be based out in every region, in every country, based on uh, and will coordinate the data protection activity based on their country's regulations and laws. So, taking an example of MNCs, suppose if it's a Europe-based organization having its headquarters somewhere in UK, then you will have the data protection officer sitting in the headquarters in the UK, and then if the MNC has its operations in several countries like Brazil, India, Africa, Australia, then in every country there will have to be a data protection coordinator who can be a person from one of the assisting teams of maybe information security or maybe human resource, who will have this role of data protection coordinator and who will coordinate with the data protection officer for running this data protection management system effectively. These data protection coordinators will also be responsible for conducting the training and awareness campaigns locally within their site and regions for their employees and for their service centers. Training and awareness campaigns, we have already discussed this. What is the goal of training and awareness campaigns? This is what a data protection management software will look like. These are some of the vendors who develop these data protection management software. One of the vendors that I am showing here on the screen is OneTrust, with whom I have worked. And the console of these data protection management softwares can be different, but they all provide the similar functionality where they will provide these assessments to be filled out for the projects who are processing the personal data of individuals, users, employees, or customers. In the backend, these softwares will have these frameworks like GDPR and other data protection regulations in place, and they will take these data protection regulations as their base and generate these questionnaires to be filled out. We will take a look at what the questionnaire looks like, what the assessment looks like, which the project needs to fill out before it gets involved into the processing of personal data, and how the approval process will look like usually within an organization. So let's take an example that you are involved in a project where processing of personal data of European citizens is required. So in that case, this is how the workflow will look like. You will start the data privacy approval with the data privacy team. You will either reach out to them through your organization's ticketing system or the email system and contact the data privacy team for approval. You will let them know that you have a project in place which will process the personal data of European citizens, and then the data privacy team will give you access to one of to this tool that they have. In this tool, they will create an assessment for your project. This assessment will be aimed at collecting more information about the personal data that your project will be processing, like what data you are collecting, how the data will be processed, where it will be processed. We will discuss this a little bit in detail on the next slide when I show you the example of the questionnaire. Then you will have to fill out these assessments and then submit it to data privacy. Data privacy team will review this assessment, and then based on your responses, they will approve, hold, or reject uh, the requirement. So what does the questionnaire that the data privacy team assigns to you will look like? This is not an exhaustive list, meaning that this is not the complete list of the questionnaire. Uh, these are just some of the uh, topics that go into uh, creating the questionnaire for the assessment of the processing activity to give you a general understanding. So I've taken out this list from uh, the GDPR site, where uh, the GDPR states that these are some of the common topics that need to be covered in the questionnaire, like the data privacy team would like to know your response. What is the purpose of this processing? What is the legal basis for this processing? What types of personal data will be collected? Um, are you collecting just general personal data such as date of birth, license number, name, email, phone number, etc.? Or will you be collecting some special category of personal data like iris scan, biometric data, uh, drug test, healthcare data, insurance data of the users, or maybe philosophical data of philosophical beliefs of the users? So that kind of data falls into special category. Will you be obtaining that kind of data? Will you be collecting that kind of data? Is the data subject to some kind of automated decision making or profiling? To give you an example, uh, the tool or software which will be processing this data, is this data going to be used for making some kind of automated decision without any human involvement? To give you an example, let's say if there is a project in a bank which kind of collects the information on its uh, customers, and based on that information, if it automatically makes a decision of rejecting or approving their uh, loan applications or maybe credit card applications, then that kind of decision making falls under the automated decision making, where the software is collecting data, or the project is collecting data, and then um, making the software take automated decisions to automatically reject or approve the applications. Uh, if this response is yes, that kind of raises the risk score of the project, because human intervention is always trusted in decision making, and if there is any automated decision making or profiling involved, then that kind of raises the risk of unfair decision making. So that is the reason um, this response is very important. Data sharing and transfer topic in this data privacy team would like to know, are you making any international transfers of the data? Are you planning to process the data, transfer the data in some other countries? Then what is the name of the countries? Will you be transferring the data to third parties like some partners, vendors, or any subsidiaries of the organization, etc.? How long will the data be retained for? Then under individual rights, how will the data subjects be informed about the rights? Will you be taking their consent? Will you be telling the data subjects that what kind of data you're collecting on them, how it is going to be used? This individual rights and this legal and ethical consideration, this more of falls under the scope of privacy impact assessment, where as I told you in the earlier slides, the privacy impact assessment is focused on protecting the individual's rights and freedoms. So this mostly falls under the scope of privacy impact assessment. Rest of the topics, they fall under the scope of data protection impact assessment questionnaire, like is the data protection officer informed about this? What are the security measures in place taken to protect the data? So with this kind of questionnaire, you will this kind of questionnaire will form the part of this assessment that is assigned for your project, which needs to be filled out, and then this will be reviewed by the data privacy team. Now, this is where this data protection management software helps, wherein it is kind of, I mean, imagine a big multinational organization, a big multinational corporation. It might have these hundreds of projects running within it, and where these hundreds of projects will be involved in processing some or the other kind of personal identifiable information data of the employees or the vendors or the partners or the customers. And then in order to track these projects, in order to make sure that they are following the compliance requirements of the data protection regulation laws, this data protection management system will help to keep a track of all the processing activity that is going on, all the different projects that is going on. It will keep a record of them. It will produce these automated assessments. Individuals will fill out that assessment, submit it, and all that um, kind of submission activity that can be uh, managed here within this software, within this application. There will be the data processing agreements will be stored here. The software will study the responses and then automatically assign a risk score for the project, and then accordingly the data protection data privacy team can decide to either further review it, hold it, reject it, approve it. uh, if there is any kind of breach, um, security incident that involved personal data, then managing that, keeping a record of it, can also help with the help of this software. So without a data protection management software, mm, I don't see it possible to manage this activity manually, because as I said that there can be hundreds of processes, hundreds of projects running within an organization involving processing of personal data, and then how will the data privacy team keep a manual track of these projects? How will they approve it, and how will the inventory be maintained? So that is the reason the data protection management software forms a core. It is at the heart of the data protection management system within an organization. So that's it in this video. I hope this has given you a general understanding of how organizations go about becoming compliant towards these various data protection laws that come out for different countries, and what data protection management system is, what are some of the main components that go into building a data protection management system, and how the approval process, the workflow looks like when a project has to uh, process personal data. All right, thank you then. I will see you in the next video.